Welcome to Dialogue. Today's topic is part of an extensive series on the modern dating crisis. If you've spent any time at all navigating the social and romantic world lately, you've probably noticed something strange happening. It's a bit of a paradox, really.
It is.
On one hand, we have more access to people than ever, and we're constantly flooded with all this advice that's supposed to build our self-worth, telling us to know our value, to demand the best.
And those are good intentions. Absolutely.
But then, on the other hand, you see relationship satisfaction just plummeting. So many people seem paralyzed, just stuck in this cycle of choice and, well, dissatisfaction. Our deep dive today is about getting to the bottom of that paradox. We're going to examine how those well-meaning cultural ideas, the ones meant to empower us, have ironically sort of morphed into this profound sense of entitlement.
And that entitlement is what ends up sabotaging the very connections we're looking for.
Exactly. We're focusing on that tipping point, the moment where empowerment stops being about self-respect and starts being about demanding devotion from other people just because of who we think we are.
That shift in self-perception is the absolute heart of the issue we're looking at. When someone is operating from that place of entitlement, their search for a partner changes completely.
How so?
It's no longer a search for mutual intimacy. It becomes a demand. A demand that someone else deliver a very specific, predefined experience. They stop being a co-creator in the relationship.
And they position themselves as the prize to be won.
Precisely. And that transforms dating from a reciprocal human process into a series of compliance checks the other person has to pass.
So our mission today is pretty rigorous. First, we need to unpack those cultural slogans that have, maybe unknowingly, fueled this mindset. They're everywhere: social media, advice from friends, and they have a real shadow side.
A very real one.
Second, we'll get into the specific behaviors that come from that, the concrete actions that pretty much guarantee the failure of a good connection.
And finally, we have to identify the one foundational quality that's required for any kind of genuine long-term intimacy. It's a quality that entitlement just actively destroys.
And that quality is humility. Let's jump in.
Okay, so the foundation. Entitlement doesn't just appear out of nowhere, right? It's fed by these cultural narratives we all absorb.
The source material is really clear on this. We have to look at these phrases that sound like good common sense, but carry this powerful and often destructive hidden meaning.
Exactly. I mean, the initial goal of these slogans is good. It's to stop people from getting burned out or trapped in a bad dynamic. But when they're adopted by someone who already has a skewed view of their own responsibilities in a relationship,
They become rigid rules.
inflexible rules that just discard our basic humanity. We have to start with the big one, the foundational pair. Don't settle and never compromise.
On the surface, who would argue with that? Of course you shouldn't settle for dishonesty or disrespect or someone whose life goals are the complete opposite of yours.
Of course not.
But this entitlement mindset, it completely corrupts what settling even means. It makes compromising on a minor preference feel the same as compromising on a core value.
And that's the distinction we really need to nail down, because that's where all the confusion lives. Core values are the non-negotiables.
Things like integrity, fidelity.
Emotional availability, financial responsibility, whether or not you both want a family. These are the pillars of a relationship. Compromising on those things.
Yeah.
That is absolutely settling.
But the list has gotten so much longer now, hasn't it? The entitled mindset has inflated that list to include preferences that are really superficial.
Or even temporary.
Give us a really clear example of this inflation in action, because I think this is where people feel they're just, maintaining their standards.
Okay, a perfect example is the modern dating profile checklist. Many people approach finding a partner with this exhaustive, fixed list that goes way beyond values.
Right.
They need a partner with a specific job title, a certain income, a particular look, and they have to share every single hobby.
Down to the obscure indie band they like.
Exactly. So let's imagine someone meets a potential partner. This person is demonstrably kind, they're supportive, they're financially stable, a great communicator, and they share the exact same core values about commitment and family.
That's 90% of what matters right there. That's the foundation.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
But this partner happens to be a little awkward in big groups, or maybe they aren't driven by the same hyper-ambitious career goals, or they just prefer a quiet night in to constant globetrotting.
Okay.
The entitlement looks at this and labels the partner as good, but not good enough. Staying with them now feels like settling because they're being forced to adjust their own minor expectations. Maybe they travel with friends sometimes instead of their partner.
So any personal adjustment, any act of mutual patience, It's seen as a negative, a subtraction from their perfect, idealized life instead of just the normal, messy reality of two people building a life together.
That's it in a nutshell. They believe they deserve a custom-built person who requires zero maintenance and just slots perfectly into their life without any friction at all.
It's an incredibly destructive way to look for a partner.
It is, because you end up discarding high-value, high-character people over things that don't really matter in the long run. You're confusing the 20% of preferences, the aesthetics, the travel style, with the 80% of foundational values that actually make a relationship work.
You're sacrificing integrity for convenience.
Perfectly said.
And this idea that love and life should be frictionless, that leads us right into the second and maybe the most popular cultural slogan: you can have it all.
It does.
It's such a powerful message for your career, for personal growth. But when you apply it to dating, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment.
It connects directly to this culture of optimization we live in. We're taught that with enough hard work and the right choices, we can optimize every single area of our lives.
Our health, our money, our job.
Everything. So when that mindset gets applied to dating, the partner just becomes the final piece of the optimization puzzle. The subtext of "you can have it all" in a relationship is that you expect a single partner to be this integrated solution for every possible need you have.
So they're looking for the emotional support system.
The brilliant intellectual sparring partner,
The stylish plus one, the professional cheerleader, the person who's great at home repairs.
and the physical ideal. All of
Yeah.
it. Instantly packaged and delivered in one person. It's an impossible burden to place on another human being.
And you have to wonder, why is this expectation so prevalent now?
Well, part of it is the paradox of choice from dating apps. When you can swipe through thousands of profiles, your brain starts treating partnership like a consumer product. It convinces you that the 100% perfect composite person must be out there if you just keep looking.
It also denies a basic truth about human connection, doesn't it?
It completely denies the fact that relationships are additive. We rely on different people for different things. Your best intellectual chat might be with a colleague. Your deepest emotional support might come from your partner. Your wildest adventures might be with your best friend.
Expecting one person to fill every single one of those roles is not only unfair, it leads to this deep resentment when they inevitably fall short in one area.
And they will fall short because they're human.
That's so interesting. So the person isn't just looking for a partner anymore. They're looking for a complete self-actualization toolkit delivered by a person who also happens to be perfect.
And if that partner doesn't arrive as this fully formed, all-inclusive solution, the entitlement kicks in and the partner is immediately seen as deficient.
Then you get into what you might call project dating.
Exactly. Seeing the partner as something to be fixed or optimized to meet that have-it-all ideal. But of course, a human being tends to push back against being optimized. And when they do, the entitled person feels robbed. They see that lack of perfection as a personal insult to their high standards.
And if the partner refuses to be optimized or just can't deliver that constant fulfillment, that brings us to the final, most destructive slogan, the one that really seals the deal on self-sabotage.
If they don't worship you, leave.
This one feels particularly insidious.
It's the most insidious because it preys on our very natural desire for intense, validating love. It takes that feeling from the honeymoon phase, that early, intense infatuation where everything is magical, and it demands that that feeling be the permanent state of the relationship.
But that initial worship phase, it's temporary by design. It's novelty, it's brain chemistry. Real love has to mature beyond that point if it's going to last.
It has to. When a relationship stabilizes, that chemical high of infatuation naturally fades. The adoration doesn't disappear, but it deepens. It becomes something quieter.
More stable.
Reliable affection, mutual loyalty, deep friendship. It shifts from being breathtaking to being grounding. But to the entitled person who's been told they deserve constant worship, they interpret this natural maturation of love as the decline of love.
They see stability as a sign that the partner isn't trying anymore, or that the relationship itself is failing.
And so they're often the ones who end things right as real. Lasting intimacy is just starting to form.
What's the internal thought process there?
It's something like, if they aren't showering me with attention every single day, if they aren't treating me like the most fascinating person in the world constantly, then they aren't meeting my baseline. They prioritize the feeling of being worshipped over the substance of a reliable, loving partnership.
They're confusing a temporary high with a sustainable connection.
That's the perfect way to put it.
So if we pull all of this together, this entire cultural foundation, All these slogans lead to one critical distortion in how people see themselves.
Yes. They develop this sense of exceptional self-importance that is completely disconnected from any need for reciprocal effort.
The core distortion is this belief that their mere existence is valuable enough to deserve exceptional devotion from a partner.
And they feel absolutely no obligation to offer that same exceptional reciprocation in return. Their perceived specialness becomes a one-way street, where the relationship's success depends entirely on the other person's performance.
That brings us to a really powerful metaphor the source material uses to describe this whole dynamic, the luxury product mindset in dating.
It's a brilliant metaphor because it captures the dynamic so accurately. Think about what a luxury product is.
It's rare, it's expensive.
It's passively beautiful. It has to be presented flawlessly. And it demands that the buyer, the potential partner, prove their worthiness to have it. They have to earn it through effort or resources or just sheer dedication.
So in the dating world, the entitled individual takes on that passive, judgmental role of the product, and the partner is forced into the role of the buyer, constantly auditioning for the privilege of being with them.
Instead of being equal collaborators building something together.
The implications for actual intimacy there are just devastating.
They are. Because a luxury product can't show any flaws. It can't admit it needs maintenance or emotional repair or compromise. It has to stay perfect and just be admired from a distance.
So that mindset makes vulnerability impossible.
Completely impossible. If you're maintaining this flawless product persona, you can't admit when you're struggling. You can't say you made a mistake. You can't ask for help because any of those things would diminish your perceived market value.
And this shows up in specific toxic behaviors, doesn't it? When a conflict comes up, what happens if they can't afford to look flawed?
It leads to silent avoidance, to relational sabotage without any confrontation. Since the luxury product can't engage in messy conflict, because that requires accountability and vulnerability, they resort to things like emotional withdrawal,
Stonewalling.
or just completely avoiding difficult subjects. And in its most extreme form, this is what fuels the phenomenon of ghosting.
Ghosting fits the luxury product model perfectly. If a high-end watch breaks, you don't try to fix it yourself, you discard it. You return it for a seamless replacement.
Precisely. Having a real conversation, working through a problem, that would require the entitled person to admit that the relationship, and by extension they need maintenance, and that shatters the whole facade of effortless perfection.
So ghosting allows them to preserve their flawless self-image.
It does. They just disappear, and in their mind they transfer the entire narrative of failure onto the other person who wasn't worthy or didn't pass the audition.
This fear of maintenance and effort flows right into another destructive belief, that true love should just happen, that love should come easy.
This is the Disneyfication of dating. This belief that if a connection is right, it'll be seamless, it'll be magical, it won't require any difficult conversations or negotiations.
And the media reinforces this constantly. We see the story of the relationship up until the big climactic moment they get together.
And that's where it stops. It completely leaves out the next 10 years of shared bills and arguments about where to spend the holidays.
Why is that expectation of effortlessness so damaging in the long run?
Because it guarantees that any relationship that requires real work patience, communication, navigating a crisis, is immediately flagged as not the one. But real intimacy is built in those difficult moments.
It's built in the trenches.
Exactly. It requires talking about family boundaries, merging financial plans, dealing with career setbacks, and supporting each other through illness.
Yeah.
None of that is easy.
So the second the relationship moves past that effortless infatuation and hits its first real obstacle, maybe a disagreement over money or a family issue,
The entitled person interprets that necessary effort as a fundamental flaw in the partner or in the connection itself. They reject the work
they just cycle through partners.
rapidly, discarding promising connections at the first sign of friction. The thought process is, my time and my energy are too valuable for this. The right person would be effortless. They see effort as a sign of deficiency.
And this is why you see people break up with genuinely good partners right before a major commitment, like moving in together.
Because that's when the reality of shared life sets in. It requires sustained effort, and that is completely at odds with the luxury product mindset.
So we've established the mindset. Let's move into the tangible behaviors this entitlement creates, the things that actively destroy relationships, starting with the main symptom, dismissing good partners and serial dissatisfaction.
This is the inevitable result of that 100% perfect checklist we talked about. The entitled person, driven by this myth of optimization, is on a relentless hunt for a mythical creature.
Though 100% perfect fit. And since that person doesn't exist, what happens to the people who are 80 or 90% compatible? The good, decent, emotionally available partners.
They're routinely ignored, or they're discarded for minor, often fixable flaws. The focus is always on the deficit.
For example.
They might be dating someone who is incredibly successful, kind to their family, totally committed, but that partner still has a roommate to save money. Or maybe they drive an older car.
Things that are actually pretty practical.
Very practical. But in the entitled framework, these signs of practicality or a minor status mismatch become deal breakers. They become definitive reasons for dismissal.
So they focus on the 10% gap, the small aesthetic difference or personality quirk, and they never allow themselves to benefit from the 90% foundation that's already there.
And this creates what we call serial dissatisfaction. It's this chronic internal inability to ever feel content in a real-world relationship. They're always chasing a fantasy.
And every time they dismiss a good partner, it reinforces their own self-image, doesn't it?
It does. It temporarily validates their belief that they have high standards and reinforces their exclusive status. It traps them deeper in the cycle because that short-term validation feels better than the long-term work of connection.
This focus on the trivial is directly connected to the inflation of unrealistic deal breakers. How does entitlement turn a minor preference into a non-negotiable wall?
Well, deal breakers are supposed to be guardians for your core values. They should be structural things like, I need a partner who is emotionally present, or I must be with someone who also wants children.
The big things.
The big things. But entitlement turns something like a different taste in music or a slightly different political opinion on a minor issue or even a messy desk into an insurmountable obstacle.
So instead of thinking, this is a difference we can probably navigate,
They think this difference proves we are fundamentally incompatible. For instance, a partner's choice in TV shows, or their reluctance to take up the entitled person's very specific, expensive hobby gets labeled as a failure of character.
a lack of a shared vision.
And the function of these exaggerated deal breakers is really important. They are, most often, a defense mechanism. By constantly auditing the partner against this impossible checklist, they make sure no one can ever get close enough to see their own vulnerability.
It's a way to maintain control and minimize their own risk.
Absolutely. If they can definitively write someone off because of a superficial fault, they don't have to face the real risks of intimacy, the risk of shared failure, or the terrifying need to expose their own flaws. The deal breakers create a safe distance.
Now let's talk about the more active, aggressive ways this shows up. The behaviors designed to make a partner feel inferior, arrogance, and competitive self-branding.
If your core belief is, I am a luxury product, then your interactions have to be designed to maintain that superior status. And that leads to arrogant behavior meant to diminish the partner's value. It keeps the spotlight firmly on you.
What are some concrete examples of that in a dating situation?
You see things like constantly comparing a current partner negatively to past partners, or always correcting what your partner says in front of friends, even on tiny things, just to establish that you're intellectually dominant.
It can even be disguised as just teasing.
Often is. Publicly diminishing their career achievements or hobbies, but framing it as a joke. All of this ensures the partner is always operating from a slightly lower social or intellectual position, which reaffirms the entitled person's inflated sense of self.
And then there's the competitive self-branding.
This is where the focus shifts completely away from authentic connection and onto selling a highly curated, often exaggerated image of yourself. A date becomes a monologue.
A performance review.
It's a performance. It's a monologue detailing all their achievements, their amazing travel stories, their high-status friends. The goal isn't mutual discovery. It's simply to prove their exceptional quality.
They're selling, not relating.
And their social media backs this up. It's all peak moments, flawless photos, aspirational activities. When they're on a date, they're not really listening. They're monitoring the partner's reaction to their performance, making sure the partner is sufficiently impressed. It keeps the dynamic off balance, with the partner always feeling like they have to chase the perceived status of the product.
Let's pull back for a moment and connect this back to its internal source. Because entitlement, as you said, it's often a shield for deep insecurity. This is about the projection of insecurity.
This is the truly tragic part of the cycle. Entitlement is almost always a massive defense mechanism built to hide a core fear of not being good enough. The individual's own insecurity about their flaws, their fear of being seen, their uncertainty about their own worth, is projected outward onto the partner as a set of impossible demands,
So because they can't stand the idea of imperfection in themselves,
which would shatter that whole luxury product facade.
they demand flawless perfection from others. The partner is basically asked to carry the entire weight of the entitled person's self-esteem.
And so when that partner inevitably fails to be perfect, when they have an off day or they're a little inconsiderate, just normal human stuff, it triggers a huge reaction.
Yes. The partner's failure to be flawless is used as an excuse for immediate dismissal.
And that dismissal provides a momentary rush of validation, of superiority. The internal story is confirmed. See? I knew they weren't good enough. My high standards saved me from settling.
And it saved them from having to look at their own flaws.
Exactly. And that short-term feeling of being right just cements the entitlement, guaranteeing they stay trapped in this self-perpetuating cycle of dismissal and ultimately loneliness. They keep projecting their internal fear onto the external world.
We've spent a lot of time defining the poison. Now we have to define the antidote. The source material identifies it as the willingness to take off that entitlement armor and embrace humility.
It's the only way. If entitlement is the belief that you deserve devotion without effort, then humility is the accurate, self-aware understanding of your own flaws and your own humanity. And it's combining that with a realistic acceptance of your partner's humanity.
It's recognizing that a partnership is the shared reciprocal work of two imperfect people.
And it's so important to clarify, this is not about self-deprecation. It's not about making yourself small or thinking less of yourself. It's about being honest about who you are.
So what does that look like?
Humility in a relationship is the willingness to be taught by your partner. It's the readiness to apologize without getting immediately defensive. It's the ability to accept shared fault when things go wrong.
The entitled person says, I'm right, and you owe me an apology.
And the humble partner says, I see my part in this, I made a mistake, and I'm willing to learn from it and say I'm sorry.
Can you ground that in a practical example? Say, during a conflict over a scheduling mix-up or a money disagreement, what does a humble partner do or say?
A humble partner immediately focuses on accountability and finding a solution. Instead of blaming or defending, they might say something like, okay, I can see where my miscommunication caused this problem. I'm sorry for the stress this created. What can we do together to make sure this doesn't happen again?
They accept shared ownership of the breakdown.
Even if the specific mistake was theirs, they recognize they're on a team. The entitled partner, on the other hand, will deflect. Well, if you had reminded me, or I wouldn't have messed up if I wasn't so stressed from all the other things you haven't done.
They refuse to accept fault because it damages that flawless narrative.
Exactly.
That shift from demanding perfection to accepting shared fault is the prerequisite for intimacy, which leads us to the most important truth here. Humility is the foundation of intimacy.
It's the only path forward. Humility allows for the vulnerability that the entitled person is trying so desperately to avoid. When you're humble, you don't need to maintain that hyper-curated, perfect facade anymore. You can finally let your guard down.
And when the guard comes down, what happens?
You allow yourself to be truly known. You can admit you're struggling at work. You can say you feel insecure about a choice you made. You can ask for help with something. That willingness to expose your weakness, to say, I need you right now, it's terrifying, but it is the raw material in intimacy.
It's only possible when both people stop performing.
When they stop the competitive self-branding and just allow themselves to be seen, flaws and all.
And the final piece of this is how humility forces reciprocity. It changes the dynamic from I deserve to we build.
It has to. If you're coming from a place of humility, you're inherently grateful for the 80% your partner brings to the table because you know you're only bringing 80% yourself.
That gratitude naturally leads to effort.
It does. The expectation of exceptional devotion is replaced by a commitment to exceptional reciprocation. If you expect your partner to be patient with you when you're struggling, you commit to being just as patient when they are. If you require loyalty, you deliver that same unwavering loyalty in return.
It creates a system of shared investment.
You move from auditing your partner against a checklist to actively investing in the partnership because you have shared goals.
So the only real way out of that serial dissatisfaction, that chronic feeling of never being content, is to change the way you look at imperfection.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the reality that successful, lasting relationships are built on the shared, sustained effort of two imperfect people. The goal isn't to find someone who is 100% perfect. It's to find someone who's 80% is deeply compatible with your 80%.
And whose 20% of flaws you're willing to navigate with kindness because you know they're doing the exact same thing for you.
Humility lets you stop using deal breakers as a shield and start using them as guidelines for building something together. It's the necessary bridge from the ego's search for a prize to the mature reality of a partnership.
This deep dive has really offered a critical look at the I deserve more culture and its undeniable link to the difficulties so many people are facing in relationships today. We started by breaking down those cultural slogans: don't settle, you can have it all, if they don't worship you, leave.
And we exposed how they distort our self-perception, turning minor preferences into these huge deal breakers and creating a destructive hunt for an effortless, perfect relationship that just doesn't exist.
We detailed how this mindset turns potential partners into contestants auditioning to be with a passive luxury product.
Which prevents the vulnerability needed for any real intimacy. And it leads to discarding good people at the first sign of necessary effort. The constant chase for the 100% ideal just guarantees chronic dissatisfaction.
Ultimately, the way out of this cycle is to recognize that entitlement is a mask for deep insecurity, and that a sustainable, reciprocal relationship can only be built on a foundation of shared humility.
The willingness to show up as you are imperfect and to contribute fully to the shared, imperfect project of a partnership. And here is a final thought for you to carry forward. If you are waiting for a partner who requires zero effort, brings zero complications, and delivers 100% fulfillment instantly and without any friction, you are waiting for a fantasy. You are waiting for an object, not a person. You have to seriously consider what depth of devotion and exceptional effort you are truly offering in return for the exceptional, sustained devotion you seek.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation, and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video.